Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Jessica Sargent, and I'm the student body president here at ISU, and I'm here to introduce our candidate that is with us today. Charles A. Wight, the 12th president of Weber State University, is a distinguished scholar and academic leader with more than 3 decades of experience in higher education. Among his accomplishments are the signing of a college town charter with Ogden City and leading the university during the public phase of its Dream 125 comprehensive fundraising campaign that raised more than $164 million in support of the university. Under Wight's guidance, the university expanded eligibility for its Dream Weber program, which provides up to 8 semesters of full tuition and fees for eligible low-income students. During Wight's administration, Weber State established a $3 million presidential outstanding teaching endowment to support faculty teaching grants and awards. Prior to his appointment at Weber State, Wight served 3 years as dean of the graduate school at the University of Utah, where he also served in other administrative and faculty roles since 1984. A physical chemist, he researches the chemistry of explosives and rocket propellants. He is the co-author of more than 160 peer-reviewed publications, 3 patent filings, and 2 books. Wight was named an Alfred P. Sloan Research Fellow and was designated a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He is an outstanding teaching award. He is a member of Phi Kappa Phi Honor Society. Wight received the University of Utah's 1985 Outstanding Teaching Award in Chemistry from students and also received the R.W. Perry Teaching Award in Chemistry. Wight is married to Victoria Rasmussen and is the father of 3 adult daughters. In his free time, he enjoys golf, fly fishing, and serving as a volunteer command pilot for Angel Flight West, a nonprofit charity providing free, non-emergency medical transportation for patients with compelling needs. I ask that we now welcome Dr. Wight.
How about now? Yep. Very good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I always like to see students and have made an effort at Weber State to get in front of many students, as many as I can. And I'll show you in a bit just a series of photographs from my presidency at Weber State. And that will give you kind of a flavor for my style as president and administrator. There are some serious moments and some not so serious moments in those photographs. I'm glad we have a few students today. Appreciate you making the time to come out. I understand that a lot of students are very busy with jobs and classes and things, so thank you for making the time to come out today. I hope to have this be very informal, and we're going to spend some time asking and answering questions. Let's see, remind me when we finish up. 11:45, okay. So I'll just spend a few minutes introducing myself. I'm Chuck Wight. I wrote the bio that you read, but it was always interesting to come to my ears through a different voice. So thank you for reading that. I'm an East Coast person by birth. I was born in New York. My parents were both school teachers in New York and Connecticut, where they grew up. And as a family, we moved to Fairfax, Virginia when I was 2nd or 4th grade, something like that. And so I grew up in Fairfax, Virginia, went to college at the University of Virginia. I graduated with a degree in chemistry from UVA, and then went to graduate school at Caltech, where I earned a PhD in chemistry. I'm a physical chemist, so those are the people who worry about what the molecules are doing. Spent a couple of years at the University of Colorado as a postdoctoral research associate, and then took my first real job teaching chemistry at the University of Utah in 1984. And when I got to the University of Utah, people asked me, how long are you going to stay? And I said, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years or something like that, and then I'll see what's available. And the longer I stayed, the better I liked it. I ended up staying there for 29 years, teaching chemistry. I had a research group, and we studied energetic materials, high explosives, rocket propellants, and also dabbled in some low temperature chemistry, made some new molecules that nobody had ever made before. They're very unstable and only exist at ultra low temperatures. Had a lot of fun for 29 years. And along the way, I got involved in administration at the University of Utah. So that started with a term as chair of the Faculty Senate, president of the Faculty Senate. They call it the Academic Senate because there are students on it. And then I worked in undergraduate studies, providing support for online courses, faculty support, student support, things like that, and policies. Then I moved to continuing education. They asked me to run the Division of Continuing Education for a few years. And then back to undergraduate studies, where I was in charge of all the general education curriculum for the university and ran the undergraduate council and a few other things. And then they asked me to run the graduate school. So I was the dean of the graduate school for 3 years. And then finally I decided that it was time to leave the university. And so I looked for jobs on the East Coast, looked up for jobs on the West Coast, and ended up moving just 35 miles away to Weber State University in Ogden, and had an amazing opportunity to become president there. And it's been a huge amount of fun. I get to do all kinds of things, and I think we'll just run through some photographs at this point. Do you have any questions at this point? Okay, so let me just run through these quickly. Okay, so first of all, please excuse the purple. If you want to imagine what I would like to be here, just imagine that all the purple is orange. Okay, so there's a lot of purple. I had lots of fun at commencement. Launching students into the world to be successful is a tremendous amount of fun. This is Alan Hall and me. He was the former board chair of our institutional trustees. This is College Application Week. I got invited to one of the local schools to help students fill out applications for college and for financial aid. And so I went there, and the president said, the principal said, we've never had a president at our school. And I said, where do college presidents think that students come from? Right? It's like the farmer who never goes to the seed store or something. I don't know. So this is Waldo. He's a national champion mascot for Weber State. Interacting with him has been a lot of fun. This is an event. I went to our College of Education where they have a children's school, and they said, would you finger paint with the children? And so I thought I would be a guest artist, but I was the guest canvas. And so they put me in a big suit, and the children finger painted on me and my wife. This is me and my wife on the day that I was appointed president at Weber State about 6 years ago. And that has been quite a lot of fun, but I've also aged a lot in 6 years. This photograph was taken last summer. The guy on the left is Braden, and this was on a trip to Africa. I went on a service trip to Ghana with a group of students, and we visited schools and hospitals. These are mostly respiratory therapy students, and it gave them and me a whole new view of the world, and so it was a tremendous experience for Victoria and me to be on this trip. This is the Circus of Physics, which is an annual thing. I'm the guy lying down, and Adam Johnston I'm lying on a bed of nails, actually. And Adam Johnston has a sledgehammer, and he broke a cinder block on my chest. And it basically was to demonstrate some of the physical concepts, that even pressure that's distributed over a large number of points doesn't hurt. I gave a lot of talks at Weber State. This is a talk that I gave for the Faculty Senate about one of the legislative sessions. This is a pep rally with our award-winning Spirit Squad at the Ogden Amphitheater. A lot of purple. This is again talking with the Faculty Senate. We had some really interesting conversations over the years, some tough conversations about graduation rates and student success and that sort of thing. Made a lot of progress. This is me, but the building behind me is Tracy Hall, which we built and designed and built while I was president. And it's a beautiful building. The thing about Tracy Hall is it has a lot of windows on the inside. So students from all majors, when they're taking courses in Tracy Hall, science general education courses, can walk down the halls, look in the windows, and see what's going on in the laboratories, and hopefully capture some of the excitement of that process, that research process. This is an early morning session with a group of Native Americans from our region who had an early morning prayer ceremony. I got my early coffee there. We also do a lot of work with entrepreneurs in the Ogden region, and so this was a celebration where we had invited people to make pitches for seed funding, and I'm giving out checks for the seed funding. Those people in turn took that seed funding and created small businesses in our region, some of which failed, but others of which succeeded. And so it's part of our contribution to entrepreneurism and economic development in the nation. This is a picture of Victoria and me at a party that we held at the start of our comprehensive funding campaign in 2014. And it had a steampunk theme, and so we dressed up in all the steampunk. And then after the campaign was over, we had raised $164 million, and so we had a big party in the student union, and so Waldo and I shot confetti all over everybody who was down below. It was quite a lot of fun. We also had another party after the campaign was over. This one had a Hollywood theme, and I dressed up as Charlie Chaplin, and Victoria dressed up as Louise Brooks, and she does a nice Louise Brooks. And some people I talked with before the main formal part of the event, they didn't recognize me, and only when I was part of the program did they recognize me. This was part of a series of community conversations that we had on very difficult topics: race, police shootings, free speech, things that people were really nervous about. And we got good buy-in from students, faculty, and the community to have those important conversations. This was the groundbreaking, or the opening of Tracy Hall. I'm a chemist, so I made this Rubens tube and made the flames dance in different patterns to the fight song. It was fun. Juneteenth celebration, and celebrated the anniversary of the end of slavery in the U.S. Had some important conversations. Again, another shot from commencement. This is more finger painting. This is Victoria and me and some children from the children's school, and they were just painting on our coveralls that we were wearing. Quite a lot of fun. This kid had good fun. This kid had fun painting on my back. So we have lighter moments as well, and that's part of what makes my job so much fun. Every Christmas, we offer a series of lectures called the Faraday Christmas Lectures, and a group of us in chemistry dress up as famous scientists. I dress up as Michael Faraday and give his famous chemistry lecture on the chemical history of a candle. And so the main audience is children, but their parents come and students come and faculty come, and so it's good for fun for children of all ages, and it's full of lots of color and flames and fun with chemistry. So this is one of the demonstrations that we did, and my partner here is Carol Campbell, who dressed up as Marie Lavoisier, and so she did a lot of the demonstrations as well. I mentioned earlier that one of the early things that happened was the students asked me to come up to the union, and they put these two snakes around my neck, and that was my sort of introduction to student leadership at Weber State. And more recently, a fraternity. These guys had been great about doing service projects and raising money for campus safety and a lot of things. They asked me if they could raise some money by having people throw pie in my face. And so that was a $50 pie. Just recently, when I announced that I was stepping down from my presidency at Weber State, I made that announcement at the Faculty Senate meeting, and that was a picture that the local newspaper took right after that meeting with me and my Assistant Vice President for Diversity, Adrian Andrews. So at this point, I think I'll open it up, and whatever questions you have, feel free. We're streaming live, so it's important to use the microphone, so I'm just going to turn this on. And if you have a question, come on up to the microphone and ask it. I know we're very close here, so, but you still need the microphone for the streaming.
Hi, I just would like to ask, one, what kind of, as of now, do you know about ISU, and what would you like to work towards?
I'm sorry, what kind of what?
Like, what do you know about ISU as of right now, and what would you like to work towards when you, and if you become president?
So I've been reading about ISU, and there's a lot of stuff in the paper and various different publications, and I understand that one of the challenges that ISU has right now is with enrollments. They're going down, and anytime a university has enrollments that are going down, the institution is stressed. And so we had a period at Weber State where our enrollments were declining slightly, and over a period of about 3 or 4 years, they were kind of flat. And so for the last 2 years, we've actually engaged in a very strategic enrollment planning process. We got a consultant in, paid them a lot of money. They helped us to define 13 or 14 things, specific things that we needed to do to increase our enrollments. And by far and away, the most important of those was to hang on to the students who we already have. To help students be more successful, to make it all the way through college to graduation. And Weber State has a problem that ISU doesn't have so much, and that is we have a huge number of part-time students. So getting students to make more of a commitment to school, to go full-time, and to graduate within, well, ideally 4 years, but at least within 6 years. So we've been doing those things, and we haven't implemented all 14 parts of this plan yet. There are still things that are being rolled out this spring and next fall, but it's already starting to show in improved enrollments. So this past fall was up 1.2% in what we call budget-related enrollments, classes that students actually pay tuition for. And that's year over year, and it's the highest enrollment that we've had ever at Weber State. And then spring was up 2.2% year over year, and as we look forward to next fall, all the early indications are that our enrollment is going to be up significantly next fall. Those are results mainly of implementing measures to keep more of the students who we already have. And that's the most important part. So I think that probably ISU should engage in a similar thoughtful process of how do we keep students? How do we make it attractive for students to stay at ISU instead of going somewhere else to finish their school or even dropping out? How do we help students financially? How do we just make sure that students are successful? So that's probably the most important thing. There are a few other things that I will be looking at, but 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, when I went to Weber State, I told people that I wasn't going to jump in and just make a lot of quick decisions. I was going to spend my first 100 days listening carefully, going out and visiting a lot of people, talking to a lot of people, trying to learn the landscape. And it was a really good thing that I did that, because if I hadn't, I probably would have made a lot of mistakes trying to fix things at Weber State on the basis of my experience at a completely different institution. And so if I'm successful in becoming the president at Idaho State, I will probably spend something like the first 3 months listening carefully to people and figuring out what are the problems here and how can we best fix them. Because taking my experience at Weber State and at the University of Utah and applying them to a very different institution at Idaho State would probably lead me to make more mistakes. And so as hard as it is, I mean, people want to fix things quickly, but as hard as it is, I'd probably spend about 3 months listening first and then starting to make decisions. You had a question?
I'm going to assume we're about the same age.
62.
62, really?
62,
Wow.
yeah.
Then I congratulate you on your lack of gray hair.
Thank you. I got a lot more gray than I did 5 years ago.
About 10 years younger than you. I'm a graduate student in the physics department. Mm-hmm. And if being president at Weber State has aged you, I'm afraid you're going to have more gray hair than me by the end of your first year here.
That's the name of the game.
You've mentioned a lot of good things already, but I wanted to ask you about Faculty Senate. Under President Bayless, the Faculty Senate was dissolved, and I'm from a department where there was quite a bit of bad blood between the president and the faculty. As recently as 2012, we had 13 faculty members, full-time faculty members, and we're down to 5. We're hiring to replace one of the 5 for the fall of 2018. In the 2 years I've been in the program, we've lost 2 professors, one of whose line got transferred to computer science because our enrollment has fallen. You've spoken about enrollment and what you can do to fix that. How are we going to get the faculty and the president's office back together on the same page?
Yeah, there are a lot of aspects to that question. And I think based on my answer to the previous question, I don't think I could be in a position of, on day one, making a bunch of changes. It's going to take a lot of thought to go in and look at what the needs are and what the history has been, and to really figure out what kind of changes need to be made over the long term. But I think that it would be fair to say that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And I'm sorry that I can only give you my past from another institution, but let's talk about that. Physics at many institutions is kind of a small department, very few students who get deeply embedded in the study of physics. And at Weber State, it's different. For some reason, this is a group of faculty who just have a tremendous amount of fun in physics. They make physics fun for students, and they have great enrollments. Who would have guessed? There's no particular reason why Weber State should be such a great place to study physics, except for the faculty. And so you saw the one picture of Adam Johnston breaking a cinder block on my chest. That's the kind of fun that they have. And so they have this Circus of Physics. They're engaged with high school students and even preschool students. Adam Johnston, that guy, has a Science in the Parks program that he runs every summer for elementary students, low-income elementary students during the summer. He feeds them lunch, he raises money, feeds them, has them doing all sorts of fun physics exercises in the parks during the summer. That creates a pipeline of students who come to the university and are ready to study physics. So a lot of our enrollment challenges have to do with just getting out there in front of people, making sure that they know about important opportunities and making it fun for them. And if we bring them in, if there's big student demand, then we have to build the faculty to meet that student demand. And so it all runs from there. So that's a partial answer to your question, but really, I think if I'm successful in getting this job, we're just going to have to take a very close look at it. As far as the Faculty Senate goes, I think I mentioned that I was president of the Academic Senate at the University of Utah. That taught me a lot about the value of shared governance. And so when I got to Weber, one of the things that happened in my first year at Weber State was the facilities management people came to me and said, you know, the library is getting kind of old. We'd like to do a lot of work to remodel it. And most of these things will be behind the walls with the heating, ventilation, air conditioning. But there's some things that we want to do in the public areas to make the library a more inviting place. And so they came with kind of a draft plan. They hadn't engaged architects at that stage, but I said, okay, let's go to the Faculty Senate and present this plan, get input, and you know, maybe we'll get some changes, and then we'll go from there before we engage an architect. So I did that and made a presentation, and I asked for faculty input on the plan and received none. Not one hand was raised in the meeting, so I said, you know, if you have suggestions, comments, anything at all, send me email, talk to me, talk to Mark Halverson, who was the facilities manager, talk to anybody, make sure that feedback gets to us before we get to the design stage. Nothing. And then a couple of months later, I found out that there were petitions circulating among faculty members about how the design was terrible and all these things. And so I called in the chair and vice chair of the Faculty Senate, and I said, what's going on? Because I asked for input and didn't get anything, and now all of a sudden there's this petition. And they said, well, you know, the previous administration had taken kind of a top-down approach to decision-making, and people just thought it was a fait accompli. It was a done deal, and they didn't think it was worthwhile to say anything at that point. And I said, no, 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 no. It's this input that keeps us from making important mistakes. And so I told facilities management, stop everything on this project. And we stopped for 2 years while we went back to all of the constituent groups, the staff, the library, the faculty, the students, everybody, and got their detailed input on what they wanted to see in a revised, remodeled library. And after 2 years, we finally had the information that we needed, and we made a design based on that plan and that input. And the library project was just completed about 1 year ago. And it's beautiful, and people love it. But if we had stayed with the original plan, there would have been a lot of people who didn't love it. And so stopping for 2 years was painful, but it was absolutely the thing to do. And so my hope is that when I'm here, if I'm here, and we engage people in conversations and ask for input, that they'll give it to us. because it's really the thing that keeps us out of trouble. Other questions?
Hi there. So, being born and raised here in Pocatello, I've seen there's a huge disconnect from the community and ISU. What would be your ways of trying to build that connecting bridge between ISU and the community?
Well, again, the best indicator of future promise is past performance. When I got to Ogden and Weber State, there had been kind of a lot of tension between the previous president and the previous mayor. And a lot of this was focused on a project that the mayor wanted to do to build a gondola from downtown Ogden to the top of Mount Ogden, and there would have been an intermediate stop in the university. And he couldn't get the faculty to support that project. And so the president was in a position where she had to oppose the mayor, and the whole project died, and there was a lot of bad feelings on all sides. And so when I was appointed president of Weber State, the first thing I did was go up and have a meeting with the mayor. The very first thing, before I even started the job. And so Mayor Caldwell and I talked. He was a new mayor, I was a new president. We said, okay, reset the relationship. Let's go from here. And over the years, we established the College Town Charter that was mentioned in your introduction. That was a document that provided a framework for communications. It allowed the city to come and have a conversation with us when they needed our help with the rodeo or whatever it was. And it allowed us to have a conversation with them when we needed their help. Just as a small example, when they opened a new LDS temple, or a remodeled LDS temple in Ogden, there was a street, Kiesel Avenue, that was between the new temple and all the restaurants on 25th Street. And we knew that a lot of people, like 700,000 people, were going to be walking down this street over a period of a few months as the temple opened with their tours. And so a lot of the businesses on this street had closed, and so there were empty storefronts. And so they asked us for our help, and we sent a bunch of facilities management people to clean up the street and the fronts of the storefronts. And in return, they talked with the property owners, and gave us permission to put up a bunch of Weber State posters to cover the windows of the empty storefronts. And so we turned it into a beautiful street with some artwork and posters, and it was just the cooperation with the city that allowed that to happen. And just having this new relationship and the charter, which allows us to meet periodically and discuss important things, is what allowed that. Later, we asked for some more difficult things. So we wanted some zoning variances along a street that borders our campus so that private developers could build new student housing right across the street from Weber State. But we needed some changes in the zoning to happen in order for that to occur. That required them to go out on a limb politically with the neighbors who frankly weren't interested in having a bunch of students parking on their streets. And so that was a difficult conversation, but they helped us to have that conversation with the neighbors. And so we got those variances, and now developers are starting to build new housing across the street. The most recent thing is something called the Ogden Community Action Network, which we call Ogden CAN. And there's an East Central neighborhood of Ogden, which is low income, very diverse neighborhood. And a lot of the people in this neighborhood are under-resourced. So they live in rental houses, some of which don't have running water, for goodness sake. I mean, it's just awful. And so we got 7 anchor institutions, including 2 hospitals, 2 school districts, no, 1 school district, health department, Tech College, Weber State, and one other partner I'm not thinking of. to get together and pool our resources and apply for grants that will help residents in this neighborhood get better access to healthcare, get better access to housing, and get a better access to education. Those are our three priorities. So I've always believed that universities have to be leaders in their community for economic prosperity and for social justice. But doing something about it requires time, effort, and money. And what we found was that not only were there people at Weber State willing and eager to put forth that effort, but we also had hospitals and school districts and other colleges around who are also willing to come to the table and put that effort in. And so together we are going to transform this neighborhood. And so being leaders in a community is not just paying lip service, it's just getting out in the neighborhood and doing some really hard work. And so that's what we're doing. And I think Pocatello could do some of the same things.
I have like a three-part question. So, yeah, why did you want to leave Weber State? And then obviously, why come to ISU? You know, why would you like to land at Idaho State University? And then how long would you like to stay here?
Okay, so why do I want to leave Weber State? I don't really want to leave Weber State. It's a great job and I would love to stay. But, you know, I set out 5 or 6 things in the beginning of my presidency to accomplish, and most of that stuff is done. And so, yeah, I could sort of coast along and stay in my office and you know, sort of do my job dabbling, but that doesn't challenge me. And so the average tenure of a college president these days nationally is 5 or 6 years. I've been at Weber State 5.5 years. It's time for a new challenge. And so I just made the decision earlier this year to leave. I made kind of an unusual decision to announce that publicly. Most presidents, when they change jobs, it's a big secret. But I knew that some of the jobs, like this one, would have very public phases of that job search. And so I wanted the opportunity to go to the Weber State community and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm going to do, and I want you to hear it from me instead of from somebody at Idaho State who calls and asks about me. And so the path that I took was a more transparent path. It's a path that more accurately reflects my personal style, but it is a little unusual, and you know I'm okay with that. So why did I leave? The second part was why ISU? Well, ISU has a great job, and if I'm looking for a challenge, this is it, right? so. More gray hair, but you know, that's what I've been about my whole life. So professionally, I'm a chemist, but on the side, I'm a Java programmer and a pilot, and I was a pretty good marathon runner, an ultra-marathon runner at one point. All during my life, I've wanted to challenge myself in different ways. And so the idea of just coasting was not really an attractive option for me. And so there are a few people at Weber State who give me a hard time about wanting to be president of Idaho State. And I just look at them and I say, well, maybe they need me more than Weber State does. So whatever it is, it's the challenge for me. And it's what excites me. How long do I want to stay? I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And you know, in 7 years, I'm going to be 69 years old and probably ready to ride off into the sunset. A member of the State Board of Education asked me essentially the same question. And my answer to him was, look, I have always advised students to choose a career that's fun. And I don't necessarily mean, you know, carnival ride fun. I mean fun in the sense that almost every night when you go home from work, you have a deep sense of satisfaction that you did a good job that day. And that's what I look for in doing a job. And so I told this member of the State Board of Education, I will throw myself into this job head first, and I will be here for at least 5 years. I will make that commitment. But at the end of 5 years or so, I'm going to reevaluate. And if I'm still having fun, if I'm, like I was at the University of Utah at the beginning of my career, I'll stay. There's no point in going while you're still having fun, still being challenged. But if we get to the stage where things are running okay and there isn't that much for a president to do, I might decide to just retire and go off into the sunset. So as long as it remains challenging, as long as it remains fun, I'll be here and give it 100% effort. Anyone else?
My next question, I know I was already up here once, but would be, as far as communication between your level of administration and the students, which often feel like the bottom of the totem pole, and they don't have a best way to get their message heard, how do you, one, experience the best way to have that happen, that communication, and then two, do you think there is a better way or something that you would like to implement within ISU that you would prefer to hear from students, or do you like the hierarchy?
Okay. Well, first of all, none of us have jobs without students. Students are at the top of the totem pole, not the bottom. So I only work as president for students because, if our enrollments aren't good, we don't have jobs, right? So that's crazy that students would feel like they're at the bottom of the totem pole. But as far as communication goes, a president's job is torn in many different directions. And in broad brushstrokes, almost all of the vice presidents should be focused inward toward running the university and communicating with students. And the president largely, not completely, but largely should face outward. Toward donors, toward raising money, toward relationships with the Board of Education, with the legislatures, with the governor, making sure that there's that external support that comes into the institution for the benefit of students. So on a day-to-day basis, probably the Vice President for Student Affairs would be my main conduit in talking with student leaders and so forth. At Weber State, I spend a lot of time talking directly with students and directly with student leaders. Are you on the, you're not on a governing board here, are you? Student body president, yeah, but at Weber State, the student body president is also a member of our board of trustees. So our student body president is Lola Moley. She's my boss, right? So I talk to her all the time. A couple of years ago, so when I first got to Weber State, the first group I talked with was students. And it was in a venue not unlike this, and I got to know some of the student leaders, and that kept me connected with student leaders for the rest of that year, because I started in January. And I was able to keep pretty good communication lines with student leaders, at least. But a couple of years ago, my wife came to me and said, when you started this job, you were kind of known as the student's president, and you've gotten away from that a little bit. And she said, you need to get out in front of students more. My wife is really smart. And so I tried several different things, but the thing that worked the best for me was actually going to deans and faculty and saying, I'd like to get in front of students more. If you would welcome me coming to your class and just talking with students for about 20 minutes about whatever's on their mind, I'd appreciate it. And I wasn't expecting a lot of invitations, but I got about 100 invitations. And so I spent 3 semesters scheduling 20-minute sessions by going to classes and speaking with students. I always carried a box of Krispy Kremes with me as an icebreaker. And we talked about parking, and we talked about sustainability, and we talked about the faculty, and we talked about government, and we talked about all sorts of things. But that really got me better in touch with students and what's on students' minds. And that shaped the kinds of decisions that we made in administration in important ways.
Since someone else has already asked the second question, I'll go again. Your study about what to do about enrollment, how long did that take? And do you think I know this is a tricky question because you don't know ISU yet very well. Are there recommendations from the study that was done at Weber State that you think might be immediately applicable here at ISU?
Yeah. So the first thing is our consultant was Ruffalo Noel Levitz, and when we started with them, we mapped out a schedule, and they wanted to go for a year. And our consultant wanted to take a year to plan the process before we implemented anything. And we said, no. We got to do this in 7 months tops. And so we accelerated the process. They were dubious that we could get enough energy to do it, but we did it. And when we finished the 7 months, the consultant from Noel Levitz came and met with me, and he said, I had my doubts in the beginning, but you guys really stepped up. And so we did it faster than they had ever done it before. And then I asked him twice during this process whether this sort of strategic enrollment planning process is something that is generic and can apply to almost any large public university, or whether you had to do a specific detailed custom plan for every university. And his answer, he waffled a little bit. I mean, he's in the business of selling consulting services, so he couldn't say publicly it's generic, but the answer he gave was, it's largely generic. There are certain things that are common to many, many universities when they undergo this process. The nuances are different because the structure is different at every university, but a lot of the same things apply to almost every large public university. So yeah, the learning was not wasted. Well, so
what do you think you could apply almost?
The reason why I can't answer your specific question is I don't know what you've already implemented already, right? So there are clearly some things that we hadn't done that you have done already, and vice versa. And so part of my listening period of 100 days will be to say, what kinds of things are you already doing for student success? What kinds of advising do you already have in place? What about orientation? What about class registration? How do you connect the registration process to your degree map? How does that all work, both technically and sociologically? What are the relationships? So we'll figure that out. Okay, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. It's nice to meet most of you.